In this video, I take a look at the Next Level Racing HF8 Haptic gaming pad that as of August 2024 now has a lower price point and what's claimed to be better proprietary software from Next Level Racing themselves. But is it any good for sim racing? And more importantly, will it work alongside SimHub? Let's take a look from an older gamer's perspective. Before I start this video, a quick disclaimer.
Already?
Next Level Racing sent me the HF8 to review free of charge. However, they have no input into the content of this video and won't get to see it before you do. That being said, on with the review. The HF8 Haptic gaming pad is, if you didn't know, a seat cover for your racing chair of choice that contains 8 motors, 4 under your bum and 4 behind your back, and vibrate to various telemetry sent from your sim program. What this effectively means is that when you go over, say, a rumble strip in your favourite racing sim, you will feel that rumble, quite literally, in the seat of your pants. And if the setup is any good, only on the side of the car where the rumble strip is. Theoretically, it can offer, especially for VR users, a greatly enhanced level of immersion, which sounds like a winner, doesn't it? When the HF8 was first released early in 2023, the majority of reviews came back with a meh. The main conclusion seemed to be that while it wasn't awful as a haptic feedback device, the supplied software from Next Level Racing was just not good enough. In particular, it had a lot of lag between the effect taking place visually and being felt in the relevant motor on the pad. This gives a disconnect to haptic feedback, pretty much the opposite of what you want. That, combined with a price thought to be too high for the overall experience offered by the HF8, created this perfect storm of negative reviews. Fast forward to now, the very hot summer of 2024, and Next Level Racing say they have greatly improved the software. They've also reduced the price of the HF8. Well, the price is certainly better, but have they got rid of the lag in the software? And even at the lower price, is the HF8 something you should consider for your sim racing experience? Fitting the pad and levels of comfort. Fitting the HF8 either to an office chair or to a sim rig chair is not an issue. The HF8 comes complete with some very strong and adaptable straps, and I secured one to my Omega RSXL chair on my Omega Art rig in about 10 minutes. Once in place, I found the comfort level to be, well, it's not great, but it's not awful. Effectively, you are sitting on 4 electric motors. They are small ones, but despite the extra padding, I could still feel them. The ones on my back less so, but there is that occasional uncomfortable moment while racing. That being said, it's not wildly uncomfortable. It's just not quite as comfortable as my XL seat was when I didn't have the HF8 in place. I got used to it fairly quickly, but being a man of a certain age, I do carry a little extra fat tissue on my body. So if you're a thin person with not much extra fat tissue, this could be an issue for you. For an endurance race, I can imagine you would start to feel the presence of the motors after a couple of hours. Personally, I tend to race for about an hour, maybe 2, then take a break. So it hasn't been something that's bothered me, and the comfort level is still very acceptable. Not a deal breaker, but something worth mentioning. I haven't tested the HF8 with a standard office chair, but from my brief observations, I would say the HF8 doesn't seem as well suited to an office chair as a sim rig chair. The pad that goes under your bum was a little too long for either of my office chairs, but is a perfect fit for my RS XL chair from Omega. Maybe the HF8 would work better with a PC gaming chair. I don't know, I don't have one, but you might want to do some measuring of your chair just to make sure. Setting up the new Next Level Racing software. At last, You are saying, I have finally reached the point where I am ready to talk about the new software from Next Level Racing. The improvements to this new software look excellent on paper. The rate at which the HF8 can now deal with the input data from the sim has increased from a fairly measly 15 FPS to a stonking 75 FPS. That's quite an improvement. And there is also the claim that the latency and responsiveness, lag to you and me, has also improved to be a smoother, more immersive experience. They also claim the HF8 should be capable of delivering a more detailed, more nuanced haptic feedback. Big claims. But does the lag, considered pretty awful on last year's incarnation of the Next Level Racing software, show any improvement at all? I downloaded the new software shown as a beta version on their website, with 2 versions being available for some reason, I don't know why. Once installed, which is a fairly simple process, I was prompted to reboot. One reboot later, and when I ran the software and allowed it access to my firewall, I could finally see all the various titles this software supports, which is a lot of racing sims and some flight sims as well. Once connected to the HF8, the lights light up green to confirm that all the pads are active, and you can test them by clicking on these glowing circles, and the matching motor inside the pad will start to vibrate. Clicking on the title you are interested in, iRacing for example, shows the current settings for that sim. By default this is set to rev limiter only, which is, no pun intended, a little limiting. If you click on the little downward arrow, it will show which motors are activated by this effect. In this case it's the upper and lower motors. You can also alter the gain of the effect using this slider. Setting up is relatively straightforward with AC, ACC and iRacing, although there is an extra step for AMS2 users and sims like F1 2024. I'll come to that extra step in a moment, but let's just say that even for those sims that need this extra step, setting up effects to be monitored by the HF8 software is simply a matter of clicking on the sim title, then selecting the effects you are interested in. It's as easy as that. For iRacing, there is also the ability to load in a suggested pre-configured setup by clicking on this load button, which loads in the various settings for iRacing. This isn't available in all sims, but for iRacing it's there. I found this to be a good starting point, but personally I would recommend the setup I have displayed here. I don't have brake or ABS activated because both of these effects are covered haptic feedback wise by my Sim 3D motors, which are attached to my pedals, but you might want those on. Rev limiter I have on, but I've reduced the gain to 50%. This is fun, but it does only seem to kick in when I'm in the pits and not when I reach the limit of revs while racing. Maybe this is the intention, but still, personally, I find that disappointing. ABS, as I've mentioned, is off because it's covered by my Sim 3D motor on the brake pedal. Acceleration I have off, as I found that the speed effect worked better for me personally. I have this set to all 4 motors on the back pad and at 100% gain. This gives me a lovely feel of the car actually being alive, especially at high speed. It's not essential to my driving, doesn't really help me in any way. It doesn't reduce my lap times or anything like that, but it does offer a lot of immersion, particularly in VR, and that helps you feel like you really are in the car. Ground effect is in the main for rumble strips and really gives a detailed buzz on the left or right of the seat pad when you hit a rumble strip. Set it like this with the front left motor matching up to the front left of the car, and so on, front right, back left and back right. You can add it to the backrest as well if you want, but I found that to be overkill. Similar story with suspension, which is especially good for when you go off track and you get a feeling for how rough the road is there, or lack of road, so as to say. Again, set it like this with the front left motor matching up to the front left of the car, and so on with front right, back left and back right. All of these settings will need tweaking to your own personal taste, and none of them are likely to improve your driving by much, but they really will make you feel as though you are on track and racing hard. Once you have the setup to your liking, you can minimize the software and launch the sim. In this case, iRacing and pop into a test drive to see if it's all working correctly and if any of the effects need some tweaking. Out on track, testing the new HF8 software. Straight away, the good news. The lag from last year's software release has been, as far as I can tell, eliminated. I didn't do any actual scientific tests, but I did set gear shift to thump me in the lumbar region on the HF8, and at the same time I set the SimHub to send the same signal to the motor attached to my accelerator pedal. By changing gear lots of times, I was able to monitor any difference between the HF8 driven by the new Next Level Racing software and the pedal motor driven by SimHub, and I can report, far as I could feel, there is no detectable lag in the new HF8 software, or at least as far as this older gamer was able to discern. As I say, this isn't scientific, so take this opinion with a pinch of salt. On track in a test lap using the settings I looked at in the last section, my experience was very positive. I have been using the HF8 with SimHub for a few months now, and this new Next Level Racing software is, in my opinion, equally as good as using SimHub with the HF8. Excellent news for those sim racers who are looking for an out-of-the-box solution and don't want to be bothered with the complexities of learning SimHub. If you are interested in SimHub, I do cover the basics in this video about Sim3D's rumble motors for my Thrustmaster T-LCM pedal set, but I couldn't blame you if you didn't want to. So if you just want to get sim racing with haptic feedback and you want to do it simply without having to learn about stuff, the HF8 with this new software is for you. More good news, at least for some sim users, is that the HF8 software and SimHub are happy to coexist on my system when using iRacing, ACC and AC. So I can now send telemetry to my rumble motors on my pedals via SimHub, while at the same time sending other telemetry to the HF8 via the Next Level Racing software. This is exactly what I wanted. It allows me to send the same effect, gear change for example, at 2 different gain settings, something that I failed to figure out with SimHub. It's probably possible, I just didn't have time to figure it out. So it's all good, right? Well, not entirely. The bad news comes in for users of AMS2 and these other sim racing programs that I've got highlighted here. The Next Level Racing software requires these sims to change some very specific settings inside each sim, and unfortunately these settings are pretty much the opposite of what SimHub wants to use. When I discovered this issue, I reached out to Next Level Racing for a solution, and to their credit, they came back with an answer very quickly. However, it is a somewhat convoluted procedure, so hold your breath, count to 10, and I will show you their suggestion and you can decide if you want to use it. Essentially, Next Level Racing's advice is to use port forwarding as an option inside SimHub. To do this, you will need to open SimHub and access the sim you are interested in this case AMS2, and click on the Game Telemetry Config button. This brings up the config menu and you are looking for the UDP forwarding section, about 2/3 down this page. Here you need to change the telemetry mode from default to UDP experimental. Experimental, that's always going to raise the fear factor, isn't it? But don't worry, I have tested it, it's fine. Now tick the forward UDP packets, but don't alter the forward target value just yet. But do take a note of the IP address that's listed here. Now go to the Next Level Racing HFS software and select the sim you want to use. In this case, again, AMS2, and then click on Game Settings. Here you need to enter the IP address that you noted down. It may be the same, but if it's different, change it. You need to look closely as it is displayed in this very faint grey font. Now you can enter a port number in this field below the IP address. Next Level Racing suggests 20 00778, but they do also warn that this port number must not be a port that is already being used by SimHub or another application. I have no idea quite how you would find out which app is using which port, so if anyone has a clue on this, please comment below. Anyway, assuming your system is okay with port 20778, enter it and click configure once you have that done. Still with me? Okay, 2 more steps and you are done, I promise. First, return now to SimHub and enter 20778 or whatever port number you decided on into this box and exit this area of the SimHub interface. I did find at this stage it was also better to exit SimHub completely and also exit the HFS software completely, by which I mean that you don't just minimize it to the task tray, you actually exit the applications. Once you've done that, you can then relaunch them both again. If you don't close them and relaunch them, you may encounter issues, so be aware of that. Once that's done and you have closed and relaunched SimHub and the HFS software, you are now ready for the very last step. And this is to launch AMS2 and in the system settings, change shared memory to no, UDP to 6 and UDP protocol to Project Cars 2. This has to be done for both SimHub and the HFS software to work together. But having done all of that, you are finally done and you can now enter a test session in AMS2 and the telemetry from the sim should now be shared by SimHub and the HFS software. And I have tested this and it really does work. It really did. AMS2 using this configuration was able to output telemetry from the HF8 software to the HF8 pad and from SimHub to the motors on my pedals. There was no issues whatsoever. I have no idea if this advice works for any other sim or, considering the warning over shared port numbers, if it will work on your system. All I can tell you is that it's a bit of a pain to get working, but once up and running, it does work perfectly and without lag on my system using AMS2. I'm afraid with the other sims, it's going to be a case of suck it and see. But in theory, it should also be possible to get the HF8 and SimHub to work lag-free with any sim you own. You might have to work a bit to get that actually to happen, but it is, in my opinion, worth the extra effort. Conclusions. So after all that, what did I actually think of the HF8 from Next Level Racing? Well, I've been using the HF8 for a number of weeks now. First with SimHub while I was waiting for the new Next Level Racing software to be released, and now finally with this new updated software. And I have to say, I do prefer the output from the Next Level Racing software. I am not sure why. It's difficult to pin down exactly what I like about the Next Level Racing software over using SimHub, but I have the feeling that with the Next Level Racing software, it's creating a more detailed feedback system that was in most cases more realistic, more nuanced, and more importantly, very much more immersive. That being said, the HF8 from Next Level Racing is in its new incarnation with a lower price and with a much improved software package, still a product that carries mixed blessings. As a plug and play solution for anyone looking to get into haptic devices, the HF8 is a great deal, especially with its new lower price and enhanced software. Possibly, in my view, this price is still a little too high for what the HF8 actually is and what it actually does. But if you really don't want to mess around with SimHub and you need something that is a bit quieter than a butt kicker, this is the best solution for you. The included software is now lag-free and very simple to use. And if this is your first journey into the world of haptic feedback, it is going to be much easier to set up than using the HF8 with SimHub. However, if you already have some haptic devices on your rig, or you plan to add some in the future, you will probably still need to use SimHub. And then the HF8 and SimHub are both going to need to be set up carefully in order for that to function correctly. and then the appeal of an out-of-the-box solution offered by the HF8 becomes somewhat tarnished. In summary, I would say the HF8 is aimed directly at those who want a heightened level of immersion in their sim racing sessions, either using the next level racing software, which now is very, very good, or SimHub, which is great, but a little bit more complicated to get up and running. The HF8 is easy to fit, fairly comfortable, and it will drag you feet first into the world of haptic immersion. But be warned, haptic feedback is an addictive and expensive pastime. Once you get one haptic device, you will want more. If you find you need any help with the HF8 or you have your own tips and tricks, please comment below. And if you need help ASAP, then pop along to the Older Gamers Perspective Discord channel. There's a link below for that. And join the friendly crowd of simmers who lurk there. In the meantime, I hope you found this video helpful, and until the next one, race clean, and I'll see you on track. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. Click the little bell icon if you want to be notified of any future videos.